Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we are unlocking the absolute mastery of workplace communication by dissecting the anatomy of a perfect pitch. We're going to break down the absolutely crucial balance between truly knowing your audience and applying unbreakable logic to your ideas. So, if you want to get your proposals approved, your emails understood, and your projects fully funded, you are in exactly the right place.
But real quick, before we get into the actual mechanics of all this, let me ask you something. Have you ever sent a perfectly logical email, maybe a meticulously crafted proposal or a super detailed report, only to have it completely backfire? Or, even worse, it was just met with total absolute silence? You know, you had all the facts, the data was literally flawless, but it just didn't land? It's incredibly frustrating, right? Well, today, we're going to fix exactly that problem by unpacking the concepts that solve this very real, everyday workplace pain point. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our roadmap for constructing your ultimate pitch. We'll start with Section 1, the cost of bad communication. Then, Section 2, categorizing the audience. After that, Section 3, Tolman's architecture. And finally, Section 4, putting it all together. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the cost of bad communication, or as we're calling it, the high stakes of the who. You know, we usually think communication is all about what we're saying, but successful communication is actually heavily dependent on who actually hears it. When we write without the reader in mind, we aren't just making some minor typo. There are dire, real-world consequences. Ignoring your audience leads straight to misunderstood messages and complete communication failure. Your writing literally misses the target. Maybe your tone is way too formal or far too casual for a supervisor. Or maybe you're using jargon that leaves the reader completely lost. And the ultimate result of all this confusion? Wasted time and wasted money. In the business world, a failed pitch isn't just a tiny oops, it is a very real financial cost to the company. Which brings us right into Section 2, categorizing the audience. This is where we navigate knowledge, personality, and diversity. So, to avoid those massive communication costs, we have to master something called audience recognition. Basically, this is the critical pre-writing stage of determining who your reader actually is, understanding their needs, and deciding exactly how they're going to interpret your message. Notice that word pre-writing. That means before you type a single word of that memo or proposal, you've got to actively evaluate your reader. The writer and the reader are intimately connected, right? The reader responds to the writing. If you don't build an audience profile first, your message simply won't mold to the recipient. And this brilliantly illustrates why that's so important. Think about a high-tech audience. These are the experts in your exact field. You share the same education, so you can effortlessly drop terms like API, deployment pipelines, or latency without explaining a single one of them. But now, imagine a lay audience, people entirely outside your field. If you take that same approach, you will completely alienate them. They need simple language, they need background information, and absolutely zero acronyms. It's like a totally different language. What works beautifully for an expert will just completely derail a beginner.
Now, what's really interesting about this breakdown is how we handle varying knowledge levels. We just talked about the high-tech expert and the lay beginner. But right smack in the middle is the low-tech audience. They have some basic knowledge, but they don't understand the deep technical functioning. Think of it like a software engineer writing an email to an accountant in the same company. You have to explain technical terms, sure, but you don't need to explain basic company operations. But pay close attention to the multiple audience. This is the tricky one. In the modern workplace, one single document might be read by your direct supervisor, an executive manager, and someone down in HR. It's a total mixed bag. The strategy? You must provide background info, explain jargon early before you actually use it, and give really clear references.
But of course, knowing their technical background is really only half the battle. You also have to consider their attitude and their personality. People aren't just data processing machines, right? If your reader is analytical, yeah, they want rigid logic and data. But an emotional reader, they respond to the human impact of your pitch. If you're dealing with a skeptical audience, they're going to question your information, which means you need incredibly strong evidence. And hey, don't forget the passive or reserved colleagues. You know, the ones who might remain totally silent in a meeting but are absolutely still judging your proposal. To keep everyone on board, your pitch has to perfectly balance logic with clarity and evidence with empathy.
Now, this complex web of personalities and knowledge levels is really amplified by the reality of modern teams. Today, we're often culturally diverse, geographically dispersed, and speaking different primary languages. And yes, let's be honest, this brings some clear challenges, misunderstandings, communication barriers, and conflicting viewpoints. It can be kind of frustrating to get everyone synced up, but consider the massive benefits when you actually do navigate this successfully. Diversity of opinion drastically improves decisions. It provides this built-in system of checks and balances, creating a broad-based understanding that a homogeneous team simply could never reach. The secret here is making sure your communication is culturally neutral, crystal clear, and perfectly adapted. All right, now that we've deeply analyzed the who, let's shift to Section 3, Tolman's Argument Architecture. This is the how of communication.
So we're shifting gears from the psychological empathy of audience recognition to the highly logical side of structuring your actual argument. Enter Tolman's model. Now, this is defined as a logical structure for building arguments in technical and professional writing, used to justify decisions, support claims, and anticipate objections. And while, yes, it originates in academia, I really want you to view this as an intensely practical, real-world toolkit. If you need to write a proposal, a report, or a recommendation to management and actually get it approved, this is the exact architecture you use to make it bulletproof.
Let's move along and see how this actually builds, step by step. First step is your claim. That's the ultimate conclusion you want accepted. Second, the grounds. This is your undeniable data and facts. Third is the warrant, which is basically the glue explaining why your data proves your claim. Fourth is backing, where you bring in research or expert credibility to strengthen that warrant. Fifth is the qualifier. This indicates the strength or limitation of the claim, using words like usually or probably so you don't overgeneralize and end up losing credibility. And finally, the rebuttal. This is where you proactively acknowledge exceptions or opposing views. Honestly, doing this shows fairness and actually makes your argument so much stronger and more realistic.
And that brings us to our grand finale, Section 4, putting it all together, the integration of audience and logic.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is this simple equation, but mastering it literally changes everything. You take audience recognition, which ensures your message is perfectly understood and adapted to the exact right knowledge level and personality. Then you add Tolman's model, which ensures the message is logically structured, backed by hard data, and anticipates any objections. When you combine that deep empathy for your reader with rigid structural logic, you get the undeniable proposal. It becomes a workplace argument that simply cannot be ignored. Let's look at a specific example about teamwork to demonstrate how all these pieces weave together seamlessly in real writing. Okay, so we start with, companies should rely on teamwork for project success. Bam, that is our claim. Because teamwork increases productivity. Right there, those are our grounds. Since multiple perspectives lead to better problem solving, teamwork improves outcomes. That is our warrant, clearly explaining the why. Although teamwork is generally effective, there is our qualifier. It can face challenges such as personality conflicts. And boom, right there at the end is the rebuttal, anticipating the manager's pushback. In just 3 short sentences, we've deployed a highly sophisticated, structurally sound argument that respects the reader's intelligence while guiding them exactly where we want them to go. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a challenge for the very next time you sit down at your keyboard. Who is the real audience for your next big pitch? Do you truly know their knowledge level? What about their personality? And perhaps most importantly, is your argument structurally, logically ready for them? Apply this powerful framework. Recognize your audience, meticulously structure your claim, and just watch how much more effective your communication becomes. Thanks so much for joining me today, and happy pitching!